What's up, guys? It's Demented Calibre here.
Was it S13 the Beast?
And I'm Periscope.
And what are we coming to talk about today, Beast?
We are gonna here to talk about mental health awareness.
So, Beast has a pretty good list, so go ahead and let him start.
My list is not substantial, I suppose, but I mean, what it is I do have history with depression, and I've been battling that for a while, and anxiety, and OCD. So those are mine. I do get uh, I do get treatments for those. Um, I am able to cope with everyday life. I mean, that's never been a problem for me. Um, I've always been able to assimilate. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't bother me. It's just that you cope with things. So that's the one thing you need to realize. If you do have a mental illness, there's never going to be that feeling of absolute bliss. There's a coping, I think, but I don't believe there's bliss. I guess unless you're unless ignorance is bliss, I guess. But um, but the thing I want to get across here is, I don't if you think that you are struggling with something, don't be afraid to go out there and get help, either by a psychologist or um, a therapist, a guidance counselor, even somebody that would be able to you can talk to kind of open up and kind of see where you're kind of going with this, because it might not turn out to be anything. It might just be something like a little rough that you can't get past for a minute, or it might turn out to be actually something and they can actually point you in the right direction, or they can help you with that. I mean, talking is a big aspect. You need to share what you're feeling, your thoughts, and that's a big key in kind of going down the road of becoming normalized, I guess, as best as you can, I suppose. Um, that's I've seen it a lot, and people are afraid to kind of go out, and because they feel like they're going to be ridiculed and all that. You know, you yes, that's a big fear. Especially, I mean, like I know because my anxiety does stem from social anxiety. Yes.
I was the exact same way.
See, I mean, and he ended up actually going to go. He's actually now acquiring help now. So I mean, you know, and now he's a lot better for doing so. Granted, we're not all 100%, but again, like I said, I don't think there's never going to be an end game. You're always going to have to be. It's always a constant battle, but you can make it more tolerable if you get help. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I actually do have some thoughts. Now, keep in mind, getting help is not a cure-all. There's really no cure for mental illnesses.
Right.
But don't let that discourage you, because there is ways to cope. Psychiatrists, I believe, they do it by medicine. Therapists do it by talking. And really, all a guidance counselor there is there to do is to assess you.
Right.
They pretty much ask you questions like what's going on, so on and so forth, and they give you their diagnosis, and then they send it off to what have you, whether it be a therapist or psychiatrist or something along those lines, and that's where you get your full diagnosis.
Right. They guide you
Yeah,
down the path. Mm-hmm.
guidance counselor.
Okay.
Now, when I went in, I think a lot of people are like this in a sense. When I went into, and this sounds like more like of a therapy group type of thing, but when I went in to go see my guidance counselor and so forth, I thought after that I was done. No, it is a uphill battle. Because here's the thing, they may try you, like say if you go, what is the psychiatrist route? Is that what I'm using for that prescribes medication? Okay, so if you go psychiatrist route, it may take several medications before they find one that actually helps. I'm currently in the process of trying to find a different medication that'll stabilize my mood to the point of me not worrying as much. And that's the problem I had with Prozac. Was the fact of the matter is it's a damn good medicine. When it works, it's a damn good medicine. But there's so many side effects that's related to it. And you're thinking to yourself, side effects, blah, blah, blah. It's like something. Sometimes these won't show up right away. And that's one thing I did want to point out. That sometimes side effects won't show up right away. It can take 6 to 8 weeks for them to show up.
And medication affects everybody differently as well.
Yeah. So the issues I have with Prozac, you may not have. And the issues you may have with the medication, I may not have. It's luck of the draw, really. I wouldn't say luck, but it's a mystery.
Yeah. It's body chemistry.
And one thing I really should have done before committing to the mental health clinic that I went to is, like, obviously I went there, but I also should have gotten a second opinion from another health clinic. And that's one thing I do want to stress is always get a second opinion. If you know people who work in that industry, you're friends with them. If your psychiatrist wants to try you out on a new medicine, talk to one of your friends. See what their opinions are. See what their practices are. It's always good to have, you want to say something, little one?
I was just waiting for my turn.
Okay. But I will continue on here in a little bit about my personal mental illnesses, and I'm going to let Taro take the stand over there, because she's probably going to correct me on some things.
No, I was going to start this by going, can't 100% confirm it, but I'm fairly confident I am the most fucked up one mentally in this group. Do either one of you care to disagree with me?
No.
I don't think it's a competition I'd care to win.
I don't think it's a competition either. I was just saying. Hoping I was gonna get corrected, but alrighty. Well, well, let's start with the biggest one. I've self-harmed since I was 7 years old. I'm now 21, about to turn 22. That is a long time to injure yourself. Yeah. So I'm fairly covered in scars because of that, and some are very old, some are relatively new. But self-harm in itself isn't typically a mental disorder. It's a symptom of typically of anxiety or depression, or in my case, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. But along with that, I also had a body dysmorphia, body dysmorphic disorder, where I absolutely hated myself, and I used to pick at my skin to try and remove my hair follicles. So I have some small roundish scars all over my body as well, and body dysmorphia, as well as stuff like bulimia, is also in your head, which is great because I've also been bulimic. My mother's anorexic. I was bulimic. I had body dysmorphia. Still technically do. I mentioned PTSD. I have dissociation disorder and dissociative identity disorder. I hear voices in my head, but I'm not schizophrenic that I'm aware of, because they're not separate entities as far as I'm aware. They're symptoms of my personality. My brain also never shuts off, which is an interesting thing that it's one of the more recent things I've been talking to my therapist about, is that my brain doesn't stop thinking. And I realize that, like, everyone's brain doesn't stop thinking, but I can't shut it off. There's this background noise playing, and it's like, it could be a freaking episode of fucking Dragon Tales that's replaying in the back of my head, and the words from it will sometimes play out of my head, and it's, my brain's trying to dissociate, but the front part of it doesn't want to dissociate, so it's a jumbled fucking mess of words and colorful shit. It's a long work in progress. I'm finding a new therapist. Not because mine sucks, He is more of a guidance counselor. He's a volunteer. He volunteers his services, so he can't actually pre-prescribe medication. Um, but I'm gonna take a little journey. I know I don't make a lot of sense. I don't ever make a lot of sense. Just try and trust that something I say in the beginning might get answered in the end. That's just how jumbled my brain is. But that's not just because of the mental health thing. I've hit it a lot of things and not a great combination of stuff. And I've had a lot of sugar. It's good. Um, going away from the more extremes of things, I'm an extreme case. I'm not normal. I'm not a normal thing. Most people don't start hurting themselves at 7 years old or have PTSD by the time they're 21. Um, I also have a form of OCD. I have OCPD, as well as the fact I have a sensory disorder, which is I don't like things touching my hands. Um, it took me forever to be able to wear a ring, and I've had to downsize it since then because I couldn't tolerate how big the other ring was. I would probably still prefer a ring smaller than this one, but I have yet to find one. So, like, I have a sensory disorder when I'm at, like, make things, like, with my hands. I like making cookies, you know, where you do that fun thing where you mix it all together with your hands, or when you're making meatloaf. I probably wash my hands 60 times within the amount of time it takes someone to make something. Um, I really am bouncing around, aren't I?
It's perfectly fine.
What?
It's perfectly fine.
Oh, okay. Um, anyway, yeah. I'm the extreme case. Normal case, everyone should see a psychologist or something once a year for a mental health assessment. Just like you're supposed to go for physicals every year. Women get pap tests, men get prostate exams. Uh, you're supposed to go do these things every so often or every few years. If you're sexually active outside of a monogamous relationship, um, you're supposed to go get yourself tested to know your status. These are all things we all know. But something that isn't pushed enough, as far as I'm concerned, is that you are actually supposed to go get mentally assessed every year because stuff can happen, stuff can change. You can go through a traumatic event that you yourself may not think is as traumatic as it is, but your brain is trying to repress it for you. The best example I have of this is my ex's father um, is normal or mentally healthy, but his wife and kids all aren't. And he has a hard time feeling empathy for them because he didn't get it. He walked into a shop the one day and found, because he is a mechanic, and found one of his coworkers hanging from the rafters. He had committed suicide at work, and he still didn't get it. And he initially refused counseling until his boss looked at him and said, "You're not coming back on the job until you at least see a psychiatrist once." And he didn't realize how affected he was by the fact that he went through this traumatic event because in the era he grew up in, you repressed those things and you just kind of moved on. He didn't realize that the stuff that happened in his life and going through that particular event had actually traumatized him because he just kind of repressed it and there was nothing to make it come back out if you just kind of repressed it, and he naturally became very angry towards those things because he was repressing them. So it is important to go and see a mental health professional every year or so. I mean, if you live the picture perfect life, maybe go every 3 years. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm a patient. Um, that sounds sad. But it's interesting because I read a status that I had made on August 29th, 2015 today. And the reason why it's relevant is because apparently I was upset. It says, I feel like this needs to be said. And what I'd like to say is I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing the comments like, why'd you do that to yourself? Don't you see how stupid that is now? Just stop feeling bad about yourself. Are you even trying? Like, really shut up. You know what? If I tell you why I have scars or why I can't feel a pain in my wrist and you're going to come out with something like that, maybe you shouldn't have asked. This happens to me a lot. People will ask me, what are those scars from? And I'll tell them and they'll be like, well, that was stupid. Well, no shit. I'm trying to get better. I take pills to make myself feel less depressed. They're no longer working. Um, apparently, you're also supposed to have medication reviews every so often to make sure your medication's working perfectly fine. This happens with normal doctors. Like if you take blood pressure medication, you have a medication review. I've been taking the same antidepressant since I was 16 years old. I'm now 21. Never had it reviewed. It's not working.
Right. Well, I mean, that's another thing. It's I think that the field itself needs a revamp. I don't think there's a. I think the problem is it's not a known science yet, especially the prescription side of it. And you know, yes, they have great uh, ways to treat it through pharmaceuticals, um, or medication or anything like that. But again, I don't think that how do I put this? I don't think the medical staff is they know what they're needing to treat, but I don't think that they have a good range about how to distinguish just because everybody takes the medication differently, like we or handles it differently, side effects or whatever, and it's hard to kind of calibrate for a more optimal uh, deviation of like which medications each person would be able to take to stop these or make you feel more even. I guess that's the best like evened out, I suppose. Um, but yeah, I think that's where it kind of that stems into that. I think that there needs to be really good thought into probably establishing more of a optimized, you know.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I've been in therapy since 2015, and therapists know different things, and they can go to the same school, have taken the same classes, and not figure out the same thing. Because I saw three therapists before the last psychotherapist I saw, and they were mostly trying to focus on the panic disorder and the anxiety and the depression, and there was another one who tried to tackle night terrors and other things wrong with me. And then I saw the psychotherapist. I gave him my spiel of my life, and he is the one who told me I have disassociation and dissociative identity. And then the one I currently speak to confirmed PTSD, reconfirmed everything else. And it's just every time I speak to someone new, they learn something different about me, and I talk to all of them differently, which is interesting because I didn't think I would, but I do.
Guess that.
But it wasn't even a therapist that gave me the medication I'm on. It was my family doctor, which I found interesting because all the psychiatrists and stuff like that I spoke to, none of them asked me about the medication I was on. And I can get that. Like, you literally have an hour time slot that you're supposed to talk to your patient about things and stuff like that. And a good 15 minutes at the beginning is, hi, how are you? How's your week been going? And a good 15 minutes at the end is rebooking the next appointment. So there's only like 30 minutes of active communication. Um, but at the same time, they're supposed to work in tandem, and they don't always do that. It doesn't always work. Like when I was a kid, I saw a Greek counselor, and they weren't very helpful because I shut down as a child, and I've up until the past year, I've been extraordinarily good at hiding my emotions and hiding my pain, and it was around this time last year that I cracked and that I could no longer hide anything and that I just started breaking down like further and further and further because I used to be a very functional maniac. That's the best word I can come up with. I don't know. Every time I call myself crazy, my therapist tells me I'm not crazy, but I lost my train of thought again. Someone else take over.
All right, so let me get comfortable here because we're not gonna be here a while because my list isn't that long. I was diagnosed with depression, but if you want to get technical, I was diagnosed with manic depression, aka bipolar, and that was actually reconfirmed by my therapist that I went see. What time is it, guys? Can somebody tell me what time it is?
It's tomorrow.
Okay. So it's 11 for me then.
No, it's 12:13 for you.
Okay, so yesterday I went see another counselor slash therapist. That's his specialty. But he had reconfirmed that I had manic depression. But the way, and I'm not sure if this is how he exactly said it, but it was bipolar without psychotic features, but it is severe. So I was diagnosed with severe bipolar without psychotic features. If that makes any sense. So depression and bipolar, they're practically the same thing because you think about bipolar for a second. Just take a look at it. It's manic highs and depressive lows. So really saying that you have depression and bipolar is kind of counterintuitive if you think about it. It kind of contradicts itself because manic depression is bipolar and it's just all one thing really. Now there is certain forms of depression. There's chronic depression, major depression, and there's I think it was clinical depression, something like that. Yeah. So there's like different forms of depression, but typically if you're bipolar, you also have depression. So, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. And I believe he also diagnosed me with anxiety.
Anxiety and depression usually go hand in hand, despite the fact that having them together is one of the worst things in the world.
Oh, no, it is. It is worse.
I think that's something I want to express because people are like, oh, everyone has anxiety. An anxiety disorder is when you're anxious about nothing, and what I mean by that is I've had this irrational fear since I was very young. When a plane flies overhead and I can hear it, I become instantly paralyzed in fear, and it's been known to trigger a panic attack. That's when it's a disorder. When you're anxious about taking a test the next day, that's pretty normal. But when you have anxiety and depression, anxiety is normally the abundance of wanting to live, sort of. That's like very generally putting it. Where normally you're trying to protect yourself from everything. Depression is well, it's exactly what it is. It's becoming very low, becoming very um, sad, basically,
Yeah.
for almost no reason. So
Yeah.
when you mix together, and now you are anxious about the plane flying overhead, but you're also extremely depressed, and you really want that plane to crash on you and just end it all. That's when you become a nice conflict in your head,
Yeah.
and that's not a fun time.
And I would like to add on another note, when anxiety becomes a disorder, a perfect can I use what happened last week as a perfect example for this
Yeah.
between me and you? Because that's the only thing I can think of at this point. So, I would like to dive a little bit deeper on what happened between me and Taro. One night, out of nowheres, literally out of nowheres, I got this anxious feeling, and I explained to her that I wanted to break up with her. Now, I didn't want to break up with her. So that's where, and it is textbook definition right here. When anxiety becomes a disorder is when it starts affecting your relationships. And then, like, from there, it manifested itself into something completely different, and I just didn't know why I was anxious.
Hold on. I know this video is hard to follow, but this is from my own experience, I can't speak for their own heads. But I know this video is hard to follow, and this is basically a look into our minds.
Yeah.
Okay, can you two agree? Is that
Yeah.
about right?
Yeah.
How it bounces, it has emotional highs and lows, and it's just
Yeah. And like I said, I did want to go in a little bit more detail about how I was feeling and what actually transpired to us breaking up for the 12 hours. So the reason I think I was anxious is because it felt like I wanted to break up with her, but when I actually did, I regretted my decision, and it was just a back and forth thing. And then I finally went. I cave in, broke down. I went to the hospital, and that's where it went from there. And then it was like, well, you should probably see a therapist. I'm like, good idea. But I do want to touch on one thing. Now, I'm not saying this like this is a definite thing that you should actually do this. If you want to, you can. But if you honestly feel like a medicine is doing more harm than good, then you have every right to stop taking it.
I'm gonna pop in an exception for that. If you're taking an antibiotic and it hurts your stomach, keep taking it. Chances are you probably should be taking it with food. But for an example, um, taking an anxiety medication that makes you notice, or people around you notice that after you take it, you become very impulsive, you become angry, you become over emotional. Typically, you're gonna want to try and wait it out for the full 6 weeks, which he did, and that's when the side effects really started to kick his ass. Um, Typically, you're gonna want to try and wait for it to stable out a little bit, but if it's impacting you and it puts you or other people in danger, don't keep taking that medication. Another thing, this is my own personal experience. I was put on a beta blocker for chronic migraine. I didn't take it very long, and every time I took it, I ended up feeling really, really weak. And I stopped taking it. Well, like, I didn't take it for the full amount of time I was supposed to. When I went back to see my doctor, she took my blood pressure, and if it wasn't the fact that I live in such a constant state of stress, my blood pressure was trying to bottom.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel right, so I stopped taking it. I took it the day before, so I was trying to give it a try. But when that happened, she told me if something makes you that uncomfortable, don't take it. That's what my doctor told me.
Yeah.
If you feel like something is hurting you, again, unless it's something like an antibiotic or stuff that is probably going to make you feel sick.
And
But if you feel it doesn't feel right, trust yourself. Usually there's a shit ton of treatments for one ailment. Or you take something and all of a sudden your entire body breaks out in a fucking rash.
I've actually had that happen to me with codeine. And just put that out there. I can't take codeine. I break out in hives.
You about to say something, Beast?
Oh, what I was gonna say is like I totally agree with you about the medication is harming you, then definitely stop that medication. But again, I would like to stress that if you feel that that is at the point that you're getting to, that you're being harmed by the medication, it's affecting you in a bad way. You, as you're stopping it, you need to tell the physician that prescribed you the medication that you're going to be quitting the medication, so they know that they can either A, find an alternative, or B, kind of know what's going on, so it's not a shock to them. Because if you go off of it and then say to even out, it completely, which doesn't, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes, though you had it and then all of a sudden you kind of like, for your body to go back to its normal function, there's a lapse that could possibly happen. So talk to a physician, the physician that prescribed you the medication in the first place, just so they know they can either walk you through it, know what's going to happen, because the better you're informed, and the better you're going to be off. Because if not, you could definitely go through um, a roller coaster of a ride, basically. So that's basically what I would
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, you're not supposed to just quit anxiety or depression medication. You're supposed to wean yourself off of it. Depending on the medication, depends on how bad the side effects are. I've completely just stopped taking a medication before. I don't advise it for no reason. And I was fine, but my ex fiance was taking the same medication, and when he went off it, he crashed bad.
And that's possible to happen. Again, like we said before, everything affects everybody differently. So it's not, it's not always either A going to be the extreme, or B it's not going to be the smooth ride it could be. So
Yeah.
I mean, or it could be dead right in the middle where it's just a rocky ride. So definitely that's why that I think we can all say that if you're going to stop medication, definitely uh, inform your physician what's going on. So in case there's steps that need to be taken, they can be on board with you on the same
Yeah.
page.
And I do want to point out, if you can't get a hold of your physician, just try and call the mental health clinic and have somebody put that in your file that you stop taking that medicine, because then he'll see it.
Right. Exactly.
I have two more things I want to say. I
Okay.
already lost the one thing I was going to say.
Oh, so one thing.
So the other thing I was going to say is that everyone knows suicide hotlines exist that you call when you're feeling suicidal. Um, Not a lot of people know that stuff called a crisis line exists. And what a crisis line is it's not necessarily if you're feeling suicidal, but if you desperately need someone to talk to, or if just in general, if you need someone to talk to, call them up. One of the first things they are going to ask you is, "Are you suicidal?" Because that is their primary like hot topic concern. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if you tell them like, "Hey, this is going on. Like, I need someone to talk to," they're not going to hang up on you. They're going to keep talking to you. But you do need to make sure that if you're not calling for a suicide, that you do call a crisis line and not a suicide hotline,
Yeah.
because there is a difference. Uh, Pretty much every first world city has both, or there's one in your area code, or there's one just inside of your area code. Um, there was something else I was going to say, and I forgot someone else.
All right. So, um, another thing you could do as alternative from the, and I don't know if every hospital does this. You got it?
Yeah. The other thing was is listen to people when they talk. Like if someone is asking you what's wrong or something like that, or they're saying you've been acting weird, don't just slough them off.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to see how you act from the outside looking in. So when people say, "Hey, what's up? Like you've been acting kind of weird lately," don't just slough them off. Be like, "Okay, how? Like what? Like what's been? How are you perceiving me?" And another thing that goes on the other end of that, don't expect people to be able to see the pain you're in. Um, Primary example for that is, like I said, I've self harmed since I was 7 years old. You'd think, how did your mom let you self harm at 7? She didn't notice. My mother and my sister were so wrapped up in other things that were going on in our life that no one noticed scratches, cuts, bruises, burns appearing on my skin. Because by the time they noticed, when they noticed again, they were gone and they were replaced by something else. And I was a naturally clumsy kid. So seeing these injuries appear didn't really make anyone raise an eyebrow. It wasn't until I was 16 my mom finally was told that I injured myself, and she was so far gone herself, she still is, that she just kind of shut it down and made it so, like, in her own mind, there's nothing wrong with me. When, trust me, honey, there is, and it probably should have been dealt with when I was a child. But listen to the people around you. But at the same time, if you know you're drowning, you need to do something about it. No one's gonna save you.
Hmm.
It's not how this works. If you want to get better, you have to get better for you.
I do
There
want
are
to. I
things where something fucking save you, but don't rely on them.
Yeah. Well, I do want to add something on that note. You technically saved me.
I've saved a lot of people. What I'm saying is, usually it doesn't happen. Do not rely on it. Be self-sufficient.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't have known I've had all this stuff.
If it wasn't for me, Lucas would have killed himself with Alexia.
That's another topic for another day. But no, back to what I was saying before that shit gets way too emotional. Um, an alternative to the crisis line, and I don't know if every hospital does this, but check your hospital. They might be able to ring up, because I know that a lot of them have psychiatrists, therapists, psychiatrists. They have something on standby, or a person on standby that actually deals with this type of stuff that you can go and talk to. I know this because the hospital I went to, the last time I went to the hospital, they had me speak to a psychiatrist.
I'm going to say you probably are going to get immediate results with the crisis line. Um, it's interesting. The only time I've ever used one is I have the Siri turned on my phone, and I said, "Hey Siri, I want to die," and it's like, "Oh well, here's numbers," and I just like touched my phone once and it called them. So that is sometimes easier if you are really um, like this close to murdering yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, like, the hospital
I
thing
know,
is the last resort.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, like, well, obviously, if you are watching this video,
I
you
mean, if,
probably have a
if you want
phone.
to end up in the hospital, not if you want to end up in the hospital, but if that's your ultimate goal and you can't bring yourself to do that, or if you are pretty close to offing yourself, I'm trying to find nicer ways to say kill yourself. Uh, if you go and you tell them that you're suicidal, 911 operators are equipped to talk you down from suicide. Uh, Typically, they will also send out an ambulance and they'll take you to the hospital, and then from there you'll probably end up seeing a psychiatrist and etc.
Yeah.
Um, but if that's like, if you feel that just talking to someone on the phone isn't gonna help, and that you need people around you and that you're alone, that is another option. Is just call 911 and speak to a 911 operator. They'll continue to talk to you until help arrives to take you somewhere.
Yeah. And I would like to point out so people don't get freaked out if they happen to take that method. 9 times out of 10, they will admit you into the hospital. They will keep you overnight. They'll keep you on 24-hour observation. Is it 24 hours? Is it 12 hours? 24, yeah. And if it's bad enough, they'll probably admit you into a psychiatric ward.
Yeah, it depends on where you are, what you're doing.
Yeah.
How you're
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered the whole basis. Again, I'm sorry if this video was hard to follow. Just like rewatch it a couple times, it'll start to make sense. Well, it will.
It will, yeah, definitely.
It's just like you got to pause it frame by frame, and then like think about what we said, and then you'll get the clear picture. I think out of them two, I was probably the most clear on what I was saying. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. Oh, wait, there is one more thing that I forgot to mention. If you are a normal person who suffers from any type of mental illnesses, don't treat it as a joke. Mental illness is not a joke. It's really not. Don't make fun of somebody because they have mental issues. Because you know what? It's a fucking struggle. Bisa, you have depression, don't you?
Yeah.
You have depression, don't you? I think we can all say here, it's not fun waking up one day feeling depressed, not wanting to do anything. It's a perfect example of this before I sign this video off. I love fishing. Them two know that. When I was texting her, I was explaining to her that I broke down, I started crying, and this, that, and the other. She's like, well, that's really weird for you to cry while fishing. Because they both know I love fishing. Fact of the matter is, depression, anxiety, everything can affect you in a way where you don't like doing the stuff you want to do because you're just so down and depressed.
I don't even remember the stuff I used to like to do.
Yeah. Now, is it because I didn't like fishing at the time? No, I love fishing. I still love it. I went fishing with my grandfather last night. Caught a little perch was it a perch? No, it was brim. About that big. Tiny little guy. But, no, I mean, like, honestly, don't make fun of somebody because they have mental illnesses. I think for people who don't have mental illnesses, I think the best option for you guys to do is to legitimately do research on it. Try and understand.
Right, because I think that's a good thing to put out there is to get the information is because you may not have it, but I'm sure somebody either or one of your loved ones may have it. And
Well, going back to my ex's dad, he married someone with it and had 2 kids with it, but had no empathy for it, no desire to understand it. And it made him very angry because of it.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say on that note, I'm not a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything like that, but I would say on that note, he does have some form of a mental illness. Yeah, so I would say on that note, he probably does have some. He might be bipolar for all you guys know, and he's just never got evaluated for it. And it's a perfect example. Keep your mental health in check. Get a routine checkup. Do all your shit that you need to do. Because, at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing. Is it a struggle?
Getting a prostate exam.
But no, I mean, like, and the easiest way my therapist explained this to me is, like, having all these things isn't a bad thing. Just so happens you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. These aren't the issues you should be afraid of. Because there's help out there, and there's people willing to help. You just got to take that hand. On a side note, I would like to give a slight update. Every Thursday, I will be seeing a therapist. Every Thursday at 1 o'clock. So, I'm definitely taking the right steps to getting better. And I think this will help. Anyways, guys, this is Demented Caliber signing out.